Over the Pirelli qualifying race, it was time for some rest and repairs in the DSP before tackling the main event later that same morning. In between, the SACCS continued its tradition of giving back to the communities in the areas where the races take place, with the handover of school shoes to some needy recipients. But it wasn't long before it was time to go racing once again. The entire field of competitors already kicked off a few kilometers during the morning's short but action-packed qualifying race, and they were all getting ready to line up for the 10:30 start of the race proper. The results of the Pirelli qualifying race is used to determine the start order of the race, and as winners of that, the honor of opening up the road once again fell on the shoulders of champions Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings in the Total Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. In fact, the Total Exilium Hilux of former champion Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen set the exact same time, but were happy to start the race 2 minutes later, as it would mean that they had one set of tracks to follow. Our drone giving us great aerial footage of what used to be known as the spectator section. Normally this would be filled with cheering fans. Right now, we were in the sky just enjoying the show that Visser and Stassen were putting on. Next up, the second factory Hilux in the hands of Janelle de Villiers, now with Spanish co-driver Alex Harrow back in the navigating seat. You'll have to wait a touch to see how that battle ended as we first cast our attention to the guys and girls competing in the special vehicle category of cross-country racing. This category traditionally dishes up a huge spectacle and consists of 3 different classes. Class A, with its huge 7-litre V8 power plants, the somewhat smaller engine cars in Class B, and the string of cars that has provided a more affordable entry into the exciting world of cross-country racing, the so-called side-by-sides or G-class of the special vehicle category that seems to be growing on each event. Nico Durant and Rickers Hutting found themselves near the back end of the field and not where they needed to be to fight for the title. SACCF chief Archie Rutherford also missed out on an opportunity to impress his youngest son Justin when they failed to reach the finish of loop number 1. The list of side-by-side Class G vehicles who did reach the Parys airfield for a well-earned rest halfway through the race included Theo Erasmus and Kearney Besadenhout. Defending champions Werner and Leon Mostert were plagued by an electrical issue in their Elf Renault Duster Can-Am Maverick for the 3rd time in as many races, and they even lost a wheel along the way. They managed to reach the DSP in 5th position, around 10 minutes behind circuit racer turned off-road racer Simon Murray, with the experienced Kim Bergman reading the notes in the Total Exilium Can-Am, claiming 4th at this crucial part of the race. It was still too early to draw any conclusions though. But the provisional podium at the halfway mark of the Ford Parys 400 looked like this. In 3rd, Christo Rose and Arno Olivier, their targets, Dean Bradbury and Dirvod Els, who were a mere 23 seconds up the road and well within striking distance. But they all would have their work cut out if they had any aspirations of reeling in the leaders. Hanno Bierman and Peter de Beer seemed well in control and reached the halfway mark with a comfortable margin of nearly 8 minutes.
Yeah, look, it was a tough day also. The straights aren't doing these side-by-sides quite well, but great job to the guys that marked the road.
Trace Price-Moore and Sean Braithwaite were behind the wheel of the only Class P car in the special vehicle field and found themselves right in the middle of a gaggle of Class G cars. Up ahead, lady driver Sandra Yonk and husband Jaco were doing a great job of keeping all the horses underneath the bonnet of the Total Agri Porter in line and in a current 3rd place in Class A, around 3 minutes behind champions-elect Tim Howes and Gary Campbell. Howes knew that a solid points finish on the day would earn him the title, which meant that out in front, the big dog and outgoing champion Lance Trethui and Adrian Roots in the passenger seat had it all their own way as they cruised to a massive 6-minute lead at the halfway point. And these were the standings at the halfway marker of the Ford Parys 400 for the guys and girls in the special vehicle category, which confirms Trethui's dominance at the top ahead of Howes and Yonk. Price-Moore had Class P all to himself, whilst Hanno Bierman led a field of highly competitive Class G side-by-sides ahead Dean Bradbury and Christo Rose. Let's now get back to the furious battle that was raging in the production car category, consisting of Class FIA and T vehicles. There were problems for a number of protagonists, such as the usually quick Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott, who finished way down the order due to some technical difficulties. Championship hopefuls Terence Marsh and Lesego Zulu reached the halfway mark 5th in class, with some work to do, as the next car was some 4 minutes up the road. That car was the NWM Ford Ranger of Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlingace, who made a welcome return to the sport after being absent for the most part of 2020. This left the following 3 cars to fight it out for the provisional podium. Winners of the previous race, Malcolm and Franz Koch, in another NWM Ford Ranger, the Malalan Toyota Hilux of the Horn brothers from, you guessed it, Malalan, and another NWM Ford Ranger occupied by Burley Borussians, Force Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen. It was a closely fought affair, with Koch having to settle for 3rd at this stage. The Malalan Toyota, on the other hand, would have been in a better position, was it not for some serious issues.
Yeah, we lost 5th and 6th gear halfway in the loop, so yeah. Try just to finish today and just take it out tonight and try to fix it.
So it was the likeable Prinsloo who emerged with the Class T lead after the first of the 2 racing loops that would make up the Ford Parys 400. And then we finally get to talk about the Class FIA cars, the same specification cars that take part in each year's Dakar Rally, the most grueling event on the planet. And even though these are tough times, it's good to see the class grow, with new talent like Philip Huerta and Roelof Janssen van Vuren joining the cross-country family. Up ahead, the Alfa Renault Duster of Johan van Staden and Leander Pienaar just made it into the top 10 and were hot on the heels of Clint Weston and Gerrit Snyman in the King Price Extreme vehicle, who were now in turn hoping to close the gap between themselves and the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux of Shamir Variawa and Dennis Murphy. The Redline crew of Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner were doing themselves no harm at all by setting a blistering pace in their Navara, reaching the DSP with the 7th fastest time. But they had some work to do if they had any aspirations of catching up to the next car on the road, the Ford Castrol Racing Ranger of Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk. Woolridge had had a tough day of it so far that included a few flat tyres and a broken air conditioner, not really what you wanted in the sweltering heat of Parys. And the last time we checked into the Class FIA standings, it was the CR6 of Brian Baragwanath and Tay Perry, who took the overall lead of the race with just 1 checkpoint to go. But they wrong-slotted on 1 or 2 turns and gave away a few valuable seconds, enough to drop down from the lead into 5th. Despite also getting lost for a few valuable seconds, the second Ford Castrol Racing Ranger of Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer reached the halfway mark in a fine 4th position, just 40 seconds from the provisional podium. So who were on the provisional podium at the halfway mark of the Ford Parys 400? As with so many times, it was these 3 crews, but in what order? Well, Chenille de Villiers and Alex Harrow qualified in 3rd, and despite the Dakar legend's best efforts, 3rd was pretty much where he would stay until getting back to the DSP for a rest. The gap to 2nd place wasn't much though, as less than a minute separated their Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux from the Total Exilium version, driven by Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen. Remember, Visser set the exact same time as Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings in the next Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux in the qualifying, so what followed on Loop 1 was a race of epic proportions. After around 170 kilometers of racing, Ladergan had the edge as he managed to open a slight gap of just 19 seconds. What a great race, and we are only at the halfway marker. The scoreboard revealed that we had a close race on our hands, with just 19 seconds separating Ladergan and Visser, with de Villiers in hot pursuit. Prinsloo was leading the Class Ts with just a single second over the Horns of Malalan and the Cox from Freiburg, not too far back either. So that's how it stood, with one more lap of a mere 170 kilometers to go. And this is what the main players had to say. Ladergan had the lead, but knew it was going to be tough from here on out.
And we ended up going down the wrong side of 2 or 3 fences. Went wrong about, in total, I think 4 times. So a bit of a frustrating loop. We lost a lot of time just driving around in circles.
Big Chris Visser was charging hard as always.
I think we're there, but it's just flat out stuff. It's from the one corner to the next corner.
Barra Gwyneth and mini navigator Tay Parys spent some time outside the car for the first time as well.
So that was the first time me and Tay have ever changed a puncture. Quite exciting. So it was okay. Obviously I do the heavy lifting and Tay does all the shooting.
All of that, and we're still only at the halfway mark of the race as another identical loop of the same distance still remained before we could crown the winners of the Ford Parys 400. True to the spirit of cross-country racing, the Ford Parys 400 was a tough race with many crews forced to throw in the towel. But as has become the norm, let's count them down and tell you about the trials and tribulations of the ones who did reach the end, especially the ones who ended up spraying the bubbly from the winner's podium.